Alright, finally making an update video. I know it's been a very long time, but making videos is not on the top of my to-do list, unfortunately. I have been making slow progress on this, amongst other projects like the dune buggy, and just got a new truck that I gotta deal with, but this is just, it's not always the priority when it maybe should be, but doesn't really matter at this point because it is pretty much done. It's totally drivable now. The biggest challenge I faced between last video and now is gonna be the tie rods. So I might have some old videos and clips here. Let me grab my flashlight of how this looked before. But you can see that the tie rod is pretty straight with, you gotta imagine a line between, if I go down here, where is it? The bushing here. So this is like the inner, or this is the pivot point that the suspension will travel on an arc, more or less. So the tie rod kind of has to match that. So the inner tie rod joint is really close to being in line with the inner control arm pivot, and then the ball joint is actually raised. The pivot point is a bit higher. It's not down here, it's up there. So I had to make these in order to drop the angle of the tie rods, because the other pivot was like way up here before, which caused like some insane bump steer, like low speed, go over a bump and you don't totally lose control, but it's like you don't want to go any faster. So basically we took, I had a friend help me with this with a lathe, because we had to cut a taper on this part here to fit into the knuckle. So basically it's a big grade 8 fastener with a taper turned down on it, and then we got a castle nut on top and on the bottom, and there's a heim joint, and then this is a 1/4 inch plate on both sides and a piece of mild steel tubing welded to the grade 8 fastener, and this is boxed in on the bottom too. It's kind of the best I could really come up with at the time. It seems to work pretty well. The kind of general consensus is the tie rod's probably going to bend before this does, but I mean, if anything happens, I'll update you guys. But it's been working well so far. I haven't taken it to get an alignment. I've just given it an alignment myself, and I mean, it's working pretty good. Right after I got these set up, I took it for a drive, and I handled like way better. I did drive it before and it was horrible, but then I mean, you can't really see from here, but I had one of the axles come apart. They were too short. I think they were probably too short before I started this project anyways, but since the transmission was a bit higher before, I guess it wasn't ever an issue. It turned into an issue though, and I had to get the car towed back because the axle fell apart and kind of metal blendered itself. So I got, these ones are only like a 1/2 inch longer, and I've also switched to wagon aluminum control arms. I had sedan or STI aluminum control arms when the axle broke, so I think everything's kind of in a little bit more too with a bit longer axle. It's been handling great. Right, yeah, I haven't really pushed it hard cornering and whatnot, so I'm not really sure how it feels in that regard. I have winners on it right now, so there's only so much you can do. It doesn't have that front sway bar either, so Not really sure what to expect, but I mean, I've been having fun with it. I've probably put on, I don't know, in the past 2 weeks, I've probably put on 600 kilometers roughly. And it's doing pretty well. Since last time, I have the heater core plumbed in. This, I guess I haven't mentioned this yet. Switched intake manifolds, which I'm really excited about. Obviously, it's a Holley Sniper sheet metal intake. I had to extend my fuel line a little bit, change up the throttle bracket. The cruise control one is sitting over here unused because I don't know if I'll be able to get that to function. I did have to kind of butcher this a little bit to fit under the hood. This came out like way too high and it was hitting the hood before, so I cut it, squished it in the press, and welded it back together. Turned out a lot better than I thought it would, but it still ain't pretty. And then obviously the Holley fuel rails and whatnot. This crossover, I made it myself out of Racetronics parts. I will include a clip here. It's actually a Snapchat I took of the Holley crossover. You would give it a little wiggle and it would just spray fuel all over the place. I'm super disappointed with that, given how expensive this thing was. But I figured it wasn't worth it to try and communicate with them just to get another one and have it probably do the same thing. So I just built my own. All of the AN hardware I've used so far here is Racetronics, and I love it. They're in the GTA near Toronto, so that's sweet. It's easy to get that stuff. These plug wires are different from last time. I've tried 4 different sets. Thanks, Amazon, for your return policy. This set is working out pretty good. This one is the one that's always problematic. There is actually a gap there. I feel like if I have the boot, it will transfer some heat to it. I feel like the air gap is better than anything. It's actually kind of hitting that one over there too. I bought straight ones, and basically you put the straight one on, then you bend it, and then I can hook it around this bolt, and it doesn't touch at all. It's great. But the problem is that set doesn't work for every single one, unless I start adding bolts for every one, and that's stupid. So I'm trying this set a little longer. That one's a touch melted on the corner. I'm gonna sleeve it and see how it goes. Plus these ones look sweet. The straight ones I have are black and lame. I got the bumper off right now so you can take a better look at the water pump. It's I'll put it on the screen what it's called, or maybe it says on the back here. I know it's a Pierberg something. It's the biggest one that you can buy off whatever website I was on. It's for some sort of BMW, but it's been working amazing. Granted, it hasn't really seen weather above 10 degrees Celsius. Barely seen like 5 degrees Celsius, I think. So I guess we'll find out in the summertime. So as far as what I've done today, I'm actually just putting the water pump, the main power feed for the water pump, on a relay. I hope the relay's rated for 40 amps, but I don't know if this measly little wiring harness is, but I guess we'll find out. I do actually have it on only a 30 amp fuse. I've been just taking the fuse out and putting it beside because it has like a phantom current draw. There's like a shutdown sequence I think you need to run for it, and I'm pretty sure the Holley is not capable of doing it, and I don't think I'm smart enough to figure it out. So just put a relay and it'll shut it off. I just go in here. I actually just tucked all the wiring and ECU. I just jammed it all up in there and it's great. It's out of the way. It used to be just sitting on the floor here. So now I can have passengers and I don't have to tell them not to squish my ECU. So that's pretty cool. I also just did this today. It's kind of crummy, but I drilled and tapped a M8 hole, pretty shallow in the front of the crank pulley bolt, and then I cut up the crankshaft sprocket for the timing belt off of the EJ, just so I could get the reluctor wheel off. And then there's the crankshaft position sensor, obviously bolted to a piece of aluminum, which is bolted to the front of the engine. And then, believe it or not, that actually functions. So basically there's 3 plugs. I kind of didn't know what I was doing here as far as the Subaru wiring harness is concerned. I had a spare one and I just started cutting it up, because the engine and intake and everything I pulled out of here, I want to keep it sort of together because it's a decent working unit. So I did have a spare one that I butchered. So the plug on the left here, where is it? The main plug, it goes right to the ECU, the Subaru ECU. It has the cam position sensor, crank position sensor, and knock sensor, and that's it. It doesn't connect to the other side. So basically I just cut the cam and knock sensor out and only use this. I'm pretty sure this ground is actually just wrapped around that to kind of isolate it, but I hooked it up regardless. On this side of things, there is this is like 2 of 3, big brown plug. It's responsible for a whole bunch of sensors and a whole bunch of grounds. None of those sensors are relevant to me, so I cut them all off, taped them up properly so they won't touch anything or each other, and grounded that, which turned on the gauge cluster, which that gave me fuel level, speed, and what else did it give me? Oh, that's all that it gave me. There's a 3rd plug down here. Where is it? It's actually right in the bottom there. It's hard to see. There's a 3rd plug, the black one. So the black one, I can't remember what else it was responsible for, but it was also responsible for the coolant temperature sensor, which oddly enough is the exact same thread as the LS coolant temperature sensor. So I have the Holley one plugged in for the Terminator X over there. And then since the heads are identical and ambidextrous, I got the Subaru one plugged in right here. Just sweet. So I have coolant readout on the dash. I have speed, fuel level, and this will give me RPM on the factory dash. It's a little antiquated, but since this is a variable reluctance sensor, I can't just wire up the Holley TAC output to it, because the Holley output's in a 12 volt square wave, which is very incompatible from what this is. And I could maybe figure it out electronically, but this was way easier, and it's done, and it works. So yeah, I think that's kind of all that's happened since last video, which was a very long time ago. Apologize again. I will try and add a couple clips at the end here of it driving around. So thank you guys for watching, and let me know what your thoughts are in the comments.